listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday. Talking to Senator John Kennedy, one of my favorite folks in the Georgia State Senate, and he has just announced that he is running for lieutenant governor. Welcome, John. How are you?
Martha, I'm great. Thank you, and good morning to you and your listeners. I appreciate the chance to get to visit with you. Thanks for having me on.
So there's a whole bunch of people running for lieutenant governor at this point in time, and the current lieutenant governor has not actually announced that he's running for governor, but everybody expects that he's going to. So why now? Why this job?
Well, on the why this job, so Martha, I'm a small-town boy from Adrian, Georgia, a little town in South Georgia, and grew up with small-town values and watched my dad, who worked around the clock to take care of folks in the community as the only physician that was there in that area, and got an early eye and a heart for public service. And as you know, I've been in the Senate for 11 years, and there's anticipated and then expected that there's going to be a lot of vacant offices coming up in our government. One of those is expected to be the lieutenant governor's office, and I have enjoyed my Senate service, and this is an opportunity for me to get to serve more of Georgians, I think, in a good way. I've been in the fight for folks for a long time now, and I've gotten a tremendous amount of encouragement and support asking me to run statewide. And so that's where we are. And on the why now, as you know, we're 11 months away from the primary, which will be in May of 26. But, 26 is going to be such a busy year in Georgia politics, with the top of our ticket, the U.S. Senate seat, being up for grabs, and we'll obviously have a good candidate there. The governor's office is going to be open, and as you said, it's fully expected that the lieutenant governor's office is going to be open, and I think that's a way for me to move into that role and continue to work for a larger group of folks, not just the 6 counties I represent. And because it's a big state and so much going on, Martha, we need to go ahead and get going. So that's the why now part.
So what do you see? And obviously you're going to be listening to a lot of people over the next few months, and this may change a little bit. But what's your sense of what the biggest issues for Georgians are?
You know, Martha, I think that what is on so many people's minds is wanting to know if we're going to have good, strong, conservative leadership to maintain the good government that we've enjoyed for the last several years under Republican and conservative leadership, particularly for the last 6.5 years under Governor Brian Kemp. And we need to have folks that will continue that. The issues that I see, I think, that are on folks' mind is, number one, we've got to keep Georgia growing. Governor Kemp has done such a good job in keeping a pro-business environment, guided us through some dark times with COVID. But folks want to make sure that we're going to continue to have that economic engine so folks can have good paying jobs to take care of their families. And, you know, when you have good jobs and people have that self-satisfaction and can be independent, a lot of the social ills that people want to throw government money at don't really occur. And so that's number one. Number two, we've got to keep Georgia learning. One of the things that I have worked on this year is, in addition to a track record of trying to make sure that our school systems are strong and safe, and making sure that teachers are well paid, is some sub-issues that are not really on everybody's radar screen. This year I passed Senate Bill 123, which is to address a real problem we have of chronic absenteeism. And Martha, that means kids that are missing 10% or more of their school days per school year. And very sadly, our absenteeism rate right now is 22%. Martha, that means there are 380,000 school children that are missing 18 days or more of school. If they're not in the seats learning, they're not going to learn to read. If they don't learn to read, they're not going to be able to graduate. And if they can't graduate, they're not going to get a chance at the American dream or the Georgia dream that we all want for them. And thirdly, we got to make sure, that we got to keep Georgia safe. We've seen some times and some crazy times in the last few years where people had some really strange ideas toward the people that work hardest to keep us safe. But we've got to continue to make sure that we have a safe environment, not only in the school systems, but also in our homes and our communities. And that's supporting the people that support us when we need them most. So I think those are the three issues that are most on people's mind. And we've had a good track record for a number of years now. We've got to maintain that because this next election is about who's going to guide Georgia going forward. And it's critically important at all levels. And I think the Lieutenant Governor's office is very important in maintaining that as well.
One of the things, I'm on the State Board of Education, and I love your involvement with education. Because it's roughly 55% of the budget that we spend. And so we got to be serious about it. And I think one of the things that's really important is the whole workforce development side of this. And that may include traditional college, that may include technical school, that may include technical college. One of the things I love about our technical college system is that if you go to technical college and then you find out somewhere down the road that you need to have a business degree, it's not that hard to make that transition. And I think that's important that we do that. Also, we're starting to train kids in elementary school in the basics of things like engineering and construction and welding in elementary school, so that when they get to high school and that they'll know a little bit about it and be able to make a good decision on what path they want to go on. I think this whole workforce development thing kind of fits into all the things you're talking about, as well as tax rates, which we'll get to in a minute. But that's really important to me.
I couldn't agree more. And you have hit on the issue that is so critical in determining what is the future growth and economic trajectory of our state look like, because you're right. As businesses are looking to relocate to the South or expand, one of the first things they want to know is that we're going to have, or wherever they're looking at as a prospective place, as a ready, willing, educated workforce. Because if you don't have that, they're going to move on. They're going to go to another area or another state. And so you're right. And I think, quite frankly, we've had some pretty good leadership over the last several years of recognizing that's critical to our economic development, but it's also critical to people being able to have good paying jobs and being self-sustaining and being independent. And also, you raise a great point. I think for the last many years, the last few decades, there seemed to have been this focus on, well, let's tell every kid that you need to go to college, and every child needs to go to college. And that's certainly wonderful. We need kids to be college educated, but not every kid wants that, and not every kid needs that as a part of their path forward. And so I'm delighted to have been helpful, and focus on recognizing the value of kids having vocational jobs and being prepared for that, and teaching those opportunities early on. I've heard so many stories, and I can tell by the excitement in your voice, you've heard them too, of the examples of children in high school, but sometimes even younger, of being exposed to some particular trade that they got excited about, and that set a pathway for them to be successful. I think we need to help further that every way we can.
Well, and we need to do a better job at educating boys. And, we've done such a good job of including girls and everything, and I'm all about that. I came along in that era. But this refocusing on kind of hands-on careers, I think is going to help our boys a lot and bring them back where they need to be. Because you've seen the numbers, and so have I, that we got a little problem with boys. And we've got to get them more involved in school. And I'm excited about that. And, we'll see what happens with all of this. But I certainly want to be a partner to you in any role that you have in this kind of workforce development, because I think it's really, really important. My final question to you is going to be about tax rates. Okay, so I think it's great that we're reducing these taxes a little bit, but for me, it's a little too slow. What's your position on taxes, and what do you think we need to do long term?
Well, I assume you're talking about the income tax rate
Yes.
that we have historically changed now for, I guess, about 4 years ago, where we have reduced our Georgia income tax rate in a historic move. And I'm very proud to have been a part of that and helping get that done. But your question is more about how about going forward. And I would tell you I am all about and want to be supportive of looking for, and I want to be creative. I want all of us to be creative in finding ways to reduce the tax rate, in particular, the income tax rate. You know, we've got states around us, Florida and Tennessee, that have a zero income tax rate. That's impactful to Georgia when folks are looking either to move here, particularly if you're perhaps retired, or if you're looking to move a business here where you're going to have a large workforce and folks are looking at that and they're comparing opportunities in other states. But Martha, I want to make sure that we're thoughtful about this as well, because what is not fair to Georgians is to reduce the income tax rate and then raise taxes somewhere else.
Right.
So
Because
that the
that's
net
the big
effect
thing
is not
in Tennessee and Florida, that the property tax and the sales tax is higher in those states.
Exactly. And so, you know, there's the philosophical decisions about where should the taxes come from, where should that burden fall on our citizens. What is not fair, though, and I want to be clear, is to reduce taxes one place and either artificially or almost in a hidden way or some way that's not talked about, raise them somewhere else. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that that's a net. I think there are ways to continue to reduce our state income tax rate. I'd love for our goal to be to get it to zero and do so in a meaningful, thoughtful way that doesn't shift that burden elsewhere on citizens. And we can do that with smart budgeting, smart conservative policies, continued economic growth. And, you know, fortunately, we've got a pretty good track record as conservatives to say, look at other states, whether it's California, who's got a problem with all their debt, or Georgia, who's sitting on a nice surplus because we have looked at tax dollars that come out of hardworking Georgians' wallets and realized that's where it came from, that's who it came from, and that's who it belongs to. And that mindset makes us be smart and thoughtful and conservative when we start spending taxpayer dollars. So, yes, would love to get the tax rates lower, in particular the income tax rate, and we'll be looking for ways to facilitate that and help make that happen.
Senator John Kennedy, if people want to help you with your run for lieutenant governor, how can they do that?
Martha, thank you. It's jfkforgeorgia.com. We are going live today or public today with my announcement of running for lieutenant governor. The primary's 11 months away, but it's a big state. I can't wait to get around and meet as many people as I can and tell them my message and what I hope to do as lieutenant governor. Thank you for your time. Martha, thanks for what you do of getting the message out with your show, and always enjoy hearing from you.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
One of the things that's going to happen here in Georgia is we're going to have a new attorney general in the next cycle. Chris Carr is running for governor, so that opens that up. And joining me right now is Senator Bill Cowsert, who has announced that he is running for attorney general. Bill, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Martha. Good morning to you and your audience.
Good morning. So tell us, why now running for attorney general, and why are you running for attorney general?
Well, the timing of this is directly related to my friend Chris Carr, who's the current attorney general, who's announced he's running for governor. Of course, that's the 2026 election cycle, so the election will be November of 26. But the primary is May of 26, which is, less than a year away now. Once Chris announced that he was running and it made it clear it was going to be an open seat, I began looking at that, and a lot of people approached me and said, you really would be ideal for this position. So I thought it through, and I agreed that I'm at a time in my career where I think it would be a great avenue for public service for me. I learned a lot about public corruption, Martha, through a special investigative committee in the Senate that I was selected to chair to investigate some of the actions of Fonnie Willis, the DA in Fulton County, some of the alleged improprieties and unethical behavior. And, really we've just kind of had a breakdown of public confidence or faith in the fairness and impartiality of our criminal justice system. from these activist DAs and people pushing agendas and weaponizing, political prosecutions, basically. So I learned a lot about that, and I've been engaged in that process. And I realized that I'd love to take that to the statewide level and serve in the capacity as the Attorney General.
So tell folks about you, Bill. Everybody may not know you. What's your background?
Yeah.
Where'd you come from? All of that good stuff.
I can give you the quick elevator speech, Martha. I grew up in Macon, Georgia. Went to public schools there, and after high school, I went to Presbyterian College up in South Carolina. Got my degree there, and then I went to the University of Georgia Law School here in Athens. I met a girl, Amy Argo from Athens, who happens to be Marty Argo, Kemp's sister, which is an interesting little connection there, and we're close friends with them, of course. But so I stayed in Athens. Those girls weren't leaving Athens, and I ended up practicing law here. Still do. We've got an 8-person law firm and do mostly defense work, predominantly civil defense, for a lot of different insurance companies throughout Northeast Georgia, and really a variety practice, whatever people need. I say I'm a little country lawyer, and it's pretty darn true. All the different counties that I've served in or, had cases in all throughout North Georgia. So I've been practicing law for over 40 years now, and I've been in the state Senate I'm in my 10th term, so I've served 19 sessions. I'm the chairman of the Regulated Industries Committee, which is a very interesting committee that handles all different types of matters, everything from regulating power to phones to alcohol, gambling, a number of other issues come before our committee. So it's been a really stimulating public service, learning about a lot of different areas and trying to contribute to making the state a better place.
So Attorney General Carr kind of made the Attorney General's office a more robust office. They do more prosecutions. They're involved in things like preventing sex trafficking and bringing those people to justice that are violating those laws, that kind of thing. That was a little change from the Attorney General before him. Is that the kind of office you're looking to have? Is that the right direction you see, or do you have a different vision for the Attorney General's office?
No, absolutely I do. In fact, what we've done as a legislature have expanded the powers of the Attorney General over the 18, 19 years I've been in the Senate. In fact, what you were talking earlier, I could hear your program about the Colorado disaster out there. And one thing I passed, I think it was about 8 years ago, was a bill on domestic terrorism. As these events became more common, I realized we needed coordinated statewide action against basically foreign terrorists, but also, American people that are committing terrorist actions. And so we gave authority to the Attorney General to sort of have joint authority to coordinate with district attorneys to prosecute these type of actions like the Boulder, Colorado action. We've given them powers on sex trafficking, on gang activities. I think there's room there to prosecute these fentanyl distributors or pushers, illegal immigration, to cooperate with the feds on that. There are a lot of areas where it really is best to have a statewide approach, because these aren't just little local actions taking place. They're coordinated activities that are statewide, and therefore they're best to be prosecuted statewide, but with coordination with local district attorneys. So it's been intentional on the legislature's part, and it's something that I look forward to participating in, because in many ways, the Attorney General is the state's top lawyer, the head of the law department. The job is to protect the public, and those are some of the major threats that we're faced with, and so I look forward to being able to engage in fighting all of those evils, essentially.
Yeah, and you may not be up to speed on this, but it was reported yesterday that Judge Ingram in Fulton County made a decision related to death row prisoners and the COVID-19 vaccine, which seems like a ridiculous thing to be talking about right now, that there was some kind of deal that was straight. I mean, we just had the Secretary of Health and Human Services say that children don't have to get the vaccine, but yet we've got some kind of ruling in Georgia right now that's saying until the COVID-19 vaccine is available to everybody, then there's a stay on executions in Georgia. I know that's still working its way through the courts, but, this just seems crazy to me in 2025.
I am not familiar with that, but it is not surprising. We have a very active judiciary these days, much more than it was intended to be, I believe, by the founding fathers. And you're seeing attorney generals from around the country now challenge actions and interpretations of laws by the federal judiciary, by the federal government. A lot of federalism issues where state attorney generals will bind together and sue to block enforcement of actions that impact states that are beyond the recognized powers of the federal government. So a lot of angles like that are very interesting to pursue. But the one you just mentioned, I'm not aware of, but I'd be the happiest guy around if I never heard the word COVID-19 again.
That's right. You are right about that. So we're going to talk a lot between now and the primary. This is really just for people to get to know you, and because I'm sure, right now are you the only person in the race right now? I think
there's
you are.
One other Republican in the race, no Democrat.
Okay, so there's going to
let your viewers know that's fine. I'm the only candidate.
That's right. So there's going to be a lot of there'll be a lot of opportunities for us to talk about what your agenda is, and I know you're just getting started. You'll be traveling around the state, which I did that for Governor Kemp and for Senator Perdue, and it's a big state. So if people want to know more about you and want to help you, how can they do that?
Cowsert for Georgia is the website, and it's easy to find, and it gives some information about me. It certainly shows fundraising activities, how you can donate online or where to send a check. That's the stage of the campaign we're in now, Martha. Everybody's trying to raise enough money so they can start spreading their message, which is an expensive process, either buying, direct mail or social media or television. So candidates getting engaged in all of these different statewide races are in the same mode right now. I've told my friends on another radio program, I said, if you see me call, you either better go ahead and take the call and get it over with and make your donation, or else you better dodge my phone call, because we're relentlessly campaigning and fundraising now. Martha, I thought you were going to ask me about this Boulder, Colorado situation. If you got time, I'll give you
I'd love to. Love to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Because that falls so in line with some of the things that I've been very engaged in the legislature. It is, being from Athens, we are very sensitive to criminal illegal aliens here. The Lake and Riley situation rocked this community, the state, and the country, to be honest with you, because it brought into very clear focus what happens when you let illegal immigrants in this country and you don't screen them, and they commit crimes and you don't deport them. It is a ticking time bomb, and it is just unjust and unfair to our citizens to be exposed to this type of dangerous conduct. The same thing just happened there, it appears, in Boulder, Colorado. This man had stayed beyond his visa. He was clearly dangerous. We have to secure the borders and deport the illegals, particularly the criminal actors, and we have been flooded with them. Two things on this bill that kind of intersect with my legislative history. One is a hate crime. I carried the hate crime legislation in the state Senate that we passed a few years ago, and we have had an explosion of those. And I know your affinity to the Jewish community. They're one of the protected classes. Anybody's not sexual, heck, all kind of different areas, but religious connections. That was a crime directed at Jewish people, and it was to intimidate that population and to terrorize them in many ways. And I'm glad to see they're prosecuting that as a hate crime. And I'm proud of my role in passing a hate crime law in the state of Georgia to protect people from being intimidated, threatened, terrorized because of whatever type of category they belong to, whatever religion, whatever sex, whatever sexual orientation, whatever race. This is wrong to intimidate groups of our population just because of who they are. The other intersection is domestic terrorism. I mentioned briefly, I passed a bill on domestic terrorism in Georgia to make that a specific crime because that is not the way we protest in America, by harming and attacking people and blowing up infrastructure or whatever. And that action there in Colorado would fit under both of these two laws that I passed in Georgia, domestic terrorism and hate crimes, and there's no room for them. We should have zero tolerance for that, and they need to prosecute that guy fully. It's too late to even deport him now. He needs to be really to be executed or to be in prison for a long time.
I will tell you what keeps me up at night, honestly. Now, we've done a great job securing the border since President Trump has gotten into office, and we've shown that you could do it, with the tools that you have and all of that. But there have been so many criminal illegal immigrants from all over the world that have come into this country. The thing that keeps me up at night, that we could have an October 7th kind of attack in a neighborhood in America with people that are already here and doing nefarious things. And that's what worries me. That's what worries me.
Same here. And part of this, our domestic terrorism law created essentially a Georgia Board of Homeland Security, of which I'm a member. And our mission was to develop a plan to prevent these type of actions before they happened, to respond to them when they do happen, but then also to prosecute fully the perpetrators. And we have a very robust anti-terrorism policy in Georgia that you can tell is working pretty darn good. I don't want to jinx it, but we are collaborating with all levels of law enforcement to make sure that we, as Barney Fife used to say, nip it in the bud. When we see these warning signs, we need to react immediately. And so many of these things are, you trace them back to their social media, that is a public domain where there are rumblings and talkings and threats or whatever, and we're intervening early to prevent these attacks from happening, and that's the obligation of our government, to protect us from these bad actors. And we have them in the world. A lot of it's mental illness, a lot of it's just nutcases like that. But we also have these very calculated, evil people that are perpetrating these crimes for their own political agendas, with an intent to try to change our policy directions or to scare or intimidate our people, to push their viewpoints, their political ideologies, and we can't tolerate that, Martha. So I live with the same fear you do, and I think it's our job to try to stop that before it ever happens. And you would be amazed at some of the security measures we use, especially some of the Super Bowl, World Cup, some of these public events that are ripe targets.
Absolutely. Bill Cowsert, good luck on your run for Attorney General, and we'll be talking to you a lot. Thanks for being here today. I
appreciate you having me.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Joining me right now is Congressman Mike Collins. I appreciate that he's always available for us to talk to about all the issues. Mike, welcome back to the program.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, help people understand what this rescission bill is, why we're all a little let down. I'll be honest with you, Mike, about, the size of the bill. I understand under reconciliation, there's certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. But explain to people about these rescission bills and what they can expect regarding actual cuts.
Yeah, well, and it's a good question because I've actually been on a learning curve myself up here. But when the DOJ group goes through and looks at a federal agency and then makes recommendations on how we can cull and cut out some of this junk that they've been doing that they really have no business doing, then what the president has to do, or what his administration has to do, is send over a rescission package. And this is just a start. And we haven't gotten it yet, so we don't know the exact details of what they're asking for rescissions. But, leaks happen in this place up there. So we do understand it's around $9.4 billion. Is that enough? No, it's not. But it's a good start. And so once they identify the exact cuts that they want to rescind from what has been appropriated to them in the past, then we'll get that package. We'll run it back through appropriations. We've got 45 days. And it's just like line item. I guess line item veto maybe in a way would be a good way to put it, or line item budgeting where you can go in and strike this and strike that. They're just doing it in arrears. In other words, they've already gotten the money appropriated to them. Those agencies and the executive branch has said, no, we don't want this, we don't want that. So
tell me why like, say, let's just for round numbers, a department gets appropriated $10 billion. I know that's like nothing in today's budget, but let's just say it's $10 billion. And they get to, August, September, and they find they're only going to spend $8 billion. Why is it that it seems like departments can't just not spend the extra $2 billion and give it back to the government?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of the power trip up here. And it's not just it's not just money; it's also people power too. That's why you see all these agencies adding on to their people. We need the most common thing that I hear in a hearing when we're talking to the agencies that I have jurisdiction over is, I need more money and I need more people. And so for them to give back the money they didn't use, that's like admitting, well, maybe we overshot our skis. And they don't want to do that. I mean, that's not the name of the game up here. And, they'll find a place to spend it. They'll find a place to spend it quick. And so that's where we've got to keep tightening our belts up here, and even in appropriating. We've got an administration, you've got a Congress now that are hawks at looking at this money and pulling these purse strings back from these people. And we got to continue to do that.
So this horrible event happened in Boulder, Colorado a couple of days ago, and I've talked to a number of people about it, and in every conversation, Laken Riley's name comes up because it turns out that this person in Boulder was a illegal immigrant also, and so this wouldn't have happened had this person not been here in the country. And as tragic as the death of Laken Riley is, her memory is not going to be forgotten. And I'm seeing people relating to that story and understanding that concept better using her situation than I have seen with anything else. Are you seeing that all over the place too?
Are you talking about with Laken or with the young lady that was going to the academy?
Yeah, I mean, no, with Laken, where that honestly her memory is being kept alive because these other horrible things are happening, and it makes people remember.
Right. Yeah, it does, and we, I was meeting with a group of folks last night, and that's one of the things. It's amazing. It was one of the first things that came up in relationship to some things that had happened. Tragic things with illegal aliens. They're out there, and especially these criminal thugs, and it's always a reference to Laken Riley, and it's one of the things that I think that's the very least that we could do as a country is, and I know that other people got murdered and killed, but Laken was in my district, and if we can help people remember her, and at the same time do good by getting these criminal thugs out of here. These people, like those two people in Venezuela, you cannot tell me they were upstanding, law-abiding citizens. If you run over somebody and then you flee and then you bang up cars on your way out of the parking lot, you know good and well they were running because there was a reason they were running. And we can't get these people out of this country fast enough.
And look, you and I know people. I mean, we've lived in this part of Georgia long enough that we have all met people who are illegal immigrants that have come here for the reasons that everybody talks about. They just want to work. They basically keep their nose clean. They don't get interactions with the law. And I would be willing to bet you that if you talk to those folks or legal immigrants that have come here, they don't want these criminal illegal immigrants in this country because it reflects badly on them. It reflects badly on the ones that are trying to do it the right way, even though they may not have started out the right way. And I think that it's an important message because the folks I talk to that I come in contact with just randomly, because, I'm one of those people that strike up a conversation with anywhere I go. They don't want these criminal illegal immigrants in the country, whether they're an immigrant or not.
No, I agree with you to almost 100%. My problem is, over the past full administrations, skipping over Trump, we have gotten to be a nation that doesn't care about laws.
Right.
And it's been more of a social movement. And we're not a nation of laws. We don't have a country. And if you came into this country illegally, I don't care how good you think you're going to be. At some point, you broke the law. You broke the law when you came here. But if you ever break the law again, it just doesn't mean the same thing. And that's where we've gotten to the point where even in society, you take the person that murdered those 2 Jewish people in New York a couple of weeks ago. You can't tell me that's not because we have become a nation that puts up with lawlessness, or disrespect, or no matter what it is, you can take out your frustration in a violent method. It is okay. It is okay to break the law, and you just cannot have it. It's okay to break a little law.
Right.
It's got to be either you do or you don't. And I'm sorry if you're a good person and you came here illegal. That's not my problem. You should have came here the right way, and you need to take advantage of what this administration is offering, and they are really putting out an olive branch saying, "Go ahead and leave, self-deport. We'll help you self-deport, and you might can come back someday the legal way." But for these that aren't, and these criminals out there, they're not going to do that. Man, they're gonna apply their trade until the point they get caught and they get kicked out, and hopefully they'll make enough money in the meantime to satisfy whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah, that's what they hope. They hope they'll make enough money in the meantime. So I hope what we're going to do is we're going to get together in a few months and we're going to see not only have a lot of rescissions been done, and I know this first bill is really important, and I know that Speaker Johnson is putting out a big push to get this first bill through, but also we're going to be seeing a new budget here. Do we have the hope that it's going to be on regular order?
Oh, God, I hope so, Martha. Both of us, man, I tell you. I think you're going to put it on our tombstone. I know. It's going to be on your tombstone. In my regular order, please.
I know.
But we should be kicked. The budget is finished from what I've been told by Chairman Arrington. We just need to kick this thing out. And appropriations, basically, they're done as well in each of the committees. We just need to run these things through. And, get the one big, beautiful bill signed by July 4th. I think that's doable. I told you we would get our end out by Memorial Day, and we did. It took an overnighter, but we got it done. But you're seeing a Congress that is functional right now. And Lord help, I don't want to jinx it. But we are functioning, and we can get back to regular. We do that, a lot of the problems are going to go away because these rescissions that you're seeing are because we've done so many omnibus bills, and just package up and just write a big fat check and, throw it at an agency, hey, see you next year. No accountability. When you go through the appropriations process, you're bringing these people in and you are making them accountable. We do bring them in. We did last year, but in the 118th Congress. But when you don't do your appropriations all the way, or you don't get them through the Senate, and even if we get them out, when we get them out from the House, you still got to get that 60-vote threshold in the Senate.
Yeah.
And but I'm not worried about that. By God, my position is in the House of Representatives. We need to do our darn job. We do our job. Let the Senate speak for what they can and can't do. And but we've got a great opportunity to do regular order. We're going to do it.
I look forward to seeing that. And, I think that we're in good shape going into 2026. I think that Democrats are making the same mistake that, quite frankly, we made in 2022, where we assumed that we were going to pick up more than we did. And I think they're doing that, too. But let me ask you one final question.
I agree with you 100%, Martha. I don't want to interrupt you. I know you, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. If we just do our job, the American people will reward you abundantly, a whole lot more than just continuously out there. I'm telling you, if we just stay up here and did our job, people notice that.
So one final question, because I think you are one of the people that do this better than anyone, and that is balancing caucus with constituents. Because I know there's a little game that's played up there where it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, your caucus comes to you and, if you don't play this game this way, we're not going to raise money for you in your next race, or you might have an opponent in your next race. And I know that goes on in the not used to be smoke-filled rooms, but they go on in different rooms now. But you've done a good job of being able to go out and campaign for other people and be a good caucus team member, but also represent your constituents at home. That seems to me the biggest challenge for members of Congress, whether you're Democrat or Republican, is if you're true to your caucus, you leave your constituents behind, but, you need the majority to be able to get things done for your constituent. How do you balance that?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Two things. You have to be honest with the American people, no matter what. Being honest and upfront and telling people exactly what you see, it goes a long way. And I think just the fact that I bring that business aspect to the table helps keep emotions out of a lot of things. And you just look at it from a business perspective. It gives a lot of clarity on what. On just the fact that we don't run this place like a business up here. But, we've been able to get out and campaign across the country for a number of people. And people just want some, what, I'll leave you with the Matt Collins rule. People know you don't have all the answers, but you got to do two things. They got to like you and they got to trust you. And as long as you got that, then people understand that you may not can tell them the answer today, but at least they trust you because you're up front with them.
Mike Collins, we always appreciate having you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Have a good day.
It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
I've spent a lot of time talking about sacrifices that soldiers have made and others that have given their lives or helped our cause in America. And there's not enough that is said about the civilian contractors and the people that go over and help in different ways and what happens with them. And there's a new book out called Heroes Without Uniforms, and Keith Richard is the author of that book. Keith, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing, Martha?
I'm doing great. So tell us a little bit about your story. And is the book title Heroes Without Uniforms, or is it Sand, Grit, and Dangerous Supply Missions?
Yeah, it's Sand, Grit, and Dangerous Supply Missions. And, you mentioned the unsung civilian heroes, and that's a subtitle, the unsung civilian heroes of the Iraq War.
So tell us a little bit about your story first.
Yeah, absolutely. First, a little bit about myself, real quickly. Father, two adult boys and 5 grandchildren. In fact, my wife is trying to gather up with the 5 grandchildren this morning. So, but other than that, yeah, my 40-year logistics professional, and in 2003, I was recruited by Kellogg Brown and Root Halliburton to support a DoD contract, which is the Logistics Civil Augmentation Program, or LOGCAP, to manage the supply chain in Iraq and Kuwait. And when I was initially going through the interview process, they said the position was going to be in Dubai and then Kuwait. And little did I know when I arrived, the position transitioned into Iraq. And from that point, chaos, confusion, disorder, tragic events ensued. And that's what the book is about.
Now, did you have a military background?
No, I did not. I was a supply chain professional, and quite honestly, I think they were having difficulty recruiting this position, which is somewhat obvious. So when they contacted me, not having been in the military, but been around the military, I grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi, close to Keesler Air Force Base, and my father-in-law was a World War II, Korea, a Vietnam vet. So those things kind of, encouraged me to give it a shot, go out and support the troops. And that was a part of my accepting that role. And
so you mentioned Halliburton as one of the companies, and I think that invokes a lot of thoughts from people about their role in a lot of things. But so you get there, you think it's going to be in Kuwait or Dubai, but you find out that the job is actually centered in Iraq. So tell us some of the things that happened and really what you want to be the message that gets out of this book, because I think a lot of us don't realize how many people that weren't in the military were actually in theater.
Yeah, great question. So if you think about Afghanistan and Iraq, there were approximately 20,000 civilians from all over the world supporting those two wars. In Iraq alone, I had approximately 2,000 people in my organization that were both in Kuwait and Iraq. And again, my role was to manage the supply chain for Department of Defense / Army. So when I arrived there, you're correct that the role was originally explained to me to be in Kuwait, and then when I arrived, my predecessor said, no, the position is transitioning to Iraq. And that was one of my first, I can't say it on the call, but one of my first moments of shock. So then he said, we're going to Iraq in a couple of weeks. And that's when I contemplated, do I tell my wife, which my wife's Lana, about the transition to Iraq? And I decided not to communicate that to her immediately. So we went to Iraq, and that was my first experience into cots, cold water showers, and bombs and bullets, and Black Hawk helicopters flying over my head the entire night. At that point, I knew something was going to be different. I didn't quite know at that time what that different was, because we were civilians, and I didn't know a lot about the operation. I just knew it was a large operation. We were leading movement control activities, which is coordinating the movement of convoys throughout Iraq, transporting 70 to 80% of the fuel for the military, different types of supplies. So there was a lot going on, but I didn't quite understand the scope yet. So when I heard the bombs and bullets, I knew something was different, but I didn't quite know what to expect yet.
Yeah, and I think that was something. So I traveled to Iraq twice to cover the war in 2005 and 2007, and I covered women in the military the first time I went over, and it was only for about 10 days. And then the second trip was about 10 days, and we tried to take a Gold Star dad back to where his son had been killed. And in both of those situations, my eyes were really open to the number of jobs that were being held by people that weren't in the military. So things as simple as, they called them third country nationals that would do a lot of the grunt work on the bases. I was near the Al-Fa Palace the first time, and then the second time I was all over the place, all the way up to going up to Ramadi. And there was, there aren't any guys peeling potatoes anymore that are in the military. That's all hired out kind of business. And I know that's a lower level job than what you were doing, but I was surprised by that because I didn't know that that's what they did. And so what I've learned from reading the materials around your book, and I will be reading your book, is that, this was kind of a big part of being able to be successful in that theater, and there was a lot of risk involved.
Yeah, out of the 2,000 employees that supported the theater transportation mission, which was my organization, approximately 1,500 were truck drivers, and of those, only 700 were U.S. expats. The remainder were third country nationals, which had the acronym of TCNs. And they were from all over the world. A lot of them followed us from the Balkans from the previous war in Yugoslavia, and they were employed as analysts, statisticians, but the truck drivers were from Pakistan, the Philippines, from all over the world. So you are 100% correct, and that was complex in itself. Is that when you have 700 truck drivers on the military supply routes in Iraq, some of them don't speak English or couldn't communicate with our convoy commanders, which, our convoys extended 25 trucks, which were about 1.5 miles long. And, that was problematic in itself, but we didn't have a choice. That's the type of operation it was, and we did our best to support the troops.
We're talking to Keith Richard. The book is Sand, Grit, and Dangerous Supply Missions, the Unsung Civilian Heroes of the Iraq War. And so, but what you learned from this, obviously you had tragedy, you lost people you knew, all of that, because that's what happens in a war zone. But I think from our discussion yesterday, you were surprised at kind of the parameters around all of this. What do you think we need to do and be aware of as Americans?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because a lot of it's going into just the unknown. And even when I was going through orientation with Halliburton and Kellogg, Brown & Root in Houston, they talked about some of the hostility, but little did we know that the insurgents were going to be funded relatively quickly. And it's what I describe as ants coming back to the anthill. And they came back with a vengeance and a force, and we were the weak link. The weak link were the civilians transporting what was about 70 to 80% of the fuel for the military. So without us, the military couldn't fight the fight. But I think that was a big part of it, is that we didn't know that we were going to be on a battlefield and what turned into a battlefield. And you mentioned there were 14 drivers killed in organization, 7 in one convoy event on April the 9th, 2004. So the message that I have is, people have asked me, would you do it again? Absolutely. Because, I'm a patriot. I'll do anything to support the troops. But it's really the Department of Defense understanding that when civilians, if we're ever in that situation again, it's understanding that we're civilians. We can't carry weapons. We need all the force protection. Force protection is the military protecting us that's needed to help them meet whatever their requirements are, whether it's on the battlefield or whatever it is.
Well, 2 things from that. That was a very busy time in 2004 when you lost those drivers, because one of my dear friend's son, the person that I was taking back to see where his son died on April 6th, 2004. In Ramadi, and it was one of those things where there were multiple things going on at one time, and air cover couldn't get in quick enough, and that was right after the 4 contractors had been hung from the bridge, had been killed and hung from the bridge in Fallujah. So that was a very, shall we say, active time. And I think I was a great supporter of that war, the global war on terror. I think that we made a lot of mistakes. And you can both support what we did and acknowledge what the mistakes are and hopefully learn from them. But the biggest single mistake was when they fired the army. When they fired the Iraqi army, what they did was create a bunch of young men without jobs, and they had guns. And so it created a situation where those guys would have been loyal to whoever was paying them. And that's ultimately what happened with the insurgency and all that someone else paid them. And so they ended up working against us. Had we kept that army in place, I think we could have reached our goals a lot quicker, and we wouldn't have ended up staying there for 14 years.
No, 1,000%. And something I describe in my book is, with the weaponry, with the IEDs, RPGs, and everything else, the small arms fire, that they also hired and employed teenage boys to throw massive rocks at our trucks as well.
Yep.
And because we were traveling, say, 40 miles an hour one direction, and these massive rocks were coming in the opposite direction, they had several drivers that were injured just for rocks being thrown. And with the rules of engagement, of course, the military couldn't engage those kids.
Yep.
And so
too many lawyers. Too many lawyers involved.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're going to fight a war, Keith, you need to fight. If your decision is to fight a war, then it needs to be all out. That's why I get so frustrated with the criticism of Israel in this particular situation with Hamas, is that, hey, it's not pretty. But if you're going to win a war, you got to be willing to destroy your enemy. And if you're not willing to destroy your enemy, you shouldn't go to war.
Absolutely. And again, that was a challenge because it was supposed to be a peacetime operation. And in a peacetime operation, of course, I mean, going back to World War II and all the others, civilians typically go in and help rebuild a country, Japan, for instance. So there are things that the DOD, you talked about mistakes that the DOD thought that they were doing, but to your point, when all those unemployed Iraqis needed to get paid and needed jobs, what did they do? They turned to insurgency, and that's when the chaos ensued, and that's when they started attacking our convoys. And we had over 700 vehicles that were damaged and or destroyed during the 1 year that I was there. So, yeah, it was chaotic, and to your point, there were mistakes that were made, and I was standing in front of generals on conference calls with generals, and my supervisor, my boss at that point, was a retired general as well. So, as the old saying goes, once a general, always a general. And so it's a constant debate with him about civilians on a battlefield and the increase in force protection, and just caught in the middle of the chaos and the confusion.
Well, we need to do a better job, whether it's contractors like you or the in-country people that helped us, being interpreters and things like that. We go through this in every war, more so in this war than we had in other wars, and we don't seem to ever fix the problem in between. So we need to work on that. The book is Sand, Grit, and Dangerous Supply Missions, The Unsung Civilian Heroes of the Iraq War. Keith Richard is the author, and we thank you for being with us today. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Thank you, Martha.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.